Hello and welcome. My name is Joe Sullivan. I'm an account manager here at Bluebeam Software, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar. We're going to be going through Bluebeam Revu, desktop PDF software with multiple different tools. Keep in mind that this webinar is meant to be for folks who are looking to get started. So there's going to be a lot of high-level features that unfortunately I will not have time to get through today. The idea here is that I'm going to cover as many different tools as I possibly can within a 1-hour webinar. There will definitely be time for you to ask questions towards the end, but for now, understand that there's going to be a lot of time spent running through as many features as possible, and there's also going to be plenty of training resources for you should you have more follow-up questions beyond this webinar. So keep that in mind. The agenda for today is as follows. We're going to start by covering Bluebeam and our solutions. We will do the demonstration of Bluebeam Revu, and again, at the risk of beating a dead horse, I just want to make it very clear that the demonstration is meant not to necessarily to be a click-by-click training, but a broad overview, a way for you to get a sense of exactly what Revu is capable of in the hopes that you guys will take some of that information and run with it on your own. And then finally, we'll wrap up at the end by pointing out some of those training opportunities. Should you want something a little bit more slowly paced, a little bit more specific to your needs, you can definitely reach out to us. We've got plenty of opportunities for training. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar or brand new to Bluebeam, here's a little bit about the company. We are used by 94% of the top U.S. contractors, 86% of top U.S. design firms, 78% of top U.S. specialty contractors, and 74% of top international design firms. So we have quite a bit of usage here in the United States across all of AEC. One thing I want to give you guys a brief background in terms of how we got here so you have a better sense of how we became such a widely used tool within this industry. A little bit of background, we're about 15 years old as a company. In addition to being 15 years old, for the first 3 years of our existence, we quite literally were just a little plugin that lived in CAD programs to create PDF files. And that was essentially it, a button that created high-quality vector content PDFs. And that went well enough for the first 3 years that we started getting a lot of suggestions from customers about other things they'd like to be able to do to those PDF files. And that's because a big chunk of our approach here is to be able to partner with our customers. We are not looking just to create a solution and then give it to customers and kind of walk away. What we really want to be able to do is develop closely knit relationships with our customers, so we are constantly improving the tool. Now, in this instance, after we got those suggestions, we developed Bluebeam Revu, a desktop PDF markup and editing software, and we got a ton of suggestions over time to incorporate punch symbols and clouds and callouts, measurement tools, overlay functions, a lot of different features that you'll see a good chunk of them today. Right around version 9, after developing Revu to do quite a few different tasks, we developed a tool called Studio, which we'll also talk about here towards the end of the webinar. Studio is essentially built for cloud-based collaboration and document sharing. And again, all of these tools have developed out of this shared approach, wanting to partner with customers, not just to develop a tool that we think will work, but receive the feedback we need from customers to develop a tool that you guys will actually use. Now, what we've developed over these last 15 years has not been just a PDF creation tool or even a PDF markup tool. What we've developed is a tool that utilizes the PDF file format as the medium of shared communication. So it's not just a replacement for, say, an Adobe type product. It's not just a way to do takeoffs. Bluebeam Revu at this point in time is a way for you to communicate using that PDF file format regardless of what part of the project you are on. So drawing management, design review, quantity takeoff, submittal review, all the way to project handover, any and or all of these work processes can be done in Bluebeam Revu, and that's sort of the product that we've been developing over the last 15 years. It wasn't necessarily where we started, but it's certainly where we've ended up now. And so again, forgive me here, it's only an hour-long webinar, and there's a lot of different tools crammed into this one license of Bluebeam, so keep that in mind as we run through. I'm going to show you as many of these functions as possible, and hopefully this is going to be useful for you. Let's jump into it. Let's get started. All right, I'm going to hit escape. And this is the first thing that you can see. This is the Bluebeam Revu interface. And before I go any further, I'm going to start by clicking right up top here. This is our profile manager, and I'll go into more detail about profiles in a little bit. For now, just note that we're in the simple profile. So the interface is pretty simple, hopefully not too overwhelming. You'll notice you've got your command bar up top with options like File, Edit, View, Document, and so forth. Notice also that these buttons on the right are context specific, and they change depending on the button I select. These ones on the left are not. These are 6 most frequently used features: the ability to create new PDFs, open existing, save, print, email, and that studio function that I promise we'll talk about more at the end of this today. So this command bar, and that's pretty much it. There's not much else in this simple profile. However, if I was to go back here to View, and from this drop-down jump out of simple and into something like Advanced, you're going to see a couple major changes to that interface. The first thing you'll notice is this panel over here on the left has opened up. There's actually 3 panels in the Revu interface. There's this one here on the left, there's a panel over here on the right, and there's actually a panel down here on the bottom as well. These little blue half-circle tabs will help you see where those panels actually exist. This panel on the bottom is the markups list, and it will actually track every single markup that you make on a PDF file. So if I was to make a cloud, for instance, very quickly on this slide, you'll notice that cloud populates in this list. And that's essentially what this markups list does. It's tracking markups. Now, again, in terms of our agenda, we're going to go into much more detail about this list a little bit later. But for now, understand it's just a panel, a part of the interface here at the bottom. In general, we want to make it as easy as possible for anyone to jump into Revu and get started working. Now, part of the problem with that is that there's a lot of people that have different expectations for how Revu should work because, again, they're coming from a lot of different backgrounds. Some people are treating Revu as an Adobe replacement, as in terms of a PDF software. Some people are using it as a takeoff tool. Some people are using it as a collaboration tool. So people have different expectations. Because of that, we tend to put our tools in multiple locations in the hopes that folks will find a tool in a place that makes sense to them. So the first way to generate any markup would be from that command bar I showed you earlier, right up here at the top. You'd simply go here to, say, Measure, grab a length measurement, click and click, and there you go. You've placed a markup simply by accessing it here at the command bar at the top. The second way that you can access any of the markups in Revu are by utilizing these tabs that live at the top of the panels over here on the left, and the tabs that live at the top of the panel over here on the right. Now, those tabs can be accessed from a button super cleverly titled Tab Access. It's a little orange triangle in the top left-hand corner, 17 different tabs that can be toggled off and on as necessary. So if I'm working with digital signatures, let's say, I can come over here and select that tab. If I'm not, I can right-click and hide it. And again, the idea here is that you want to be able to customize this to make it workable for you. So if you have some tools that you're never going to use, let's say you're not a fan of bookmarks, right-click and hide that bookmarks tab and get it out of the interface so it doesn't clutter up your space. If I wanted to access the exact same length measurement markup that you see here, but from the tabs, I can come over here to the Measurement tab in the panel on the right, grab my length markup, click, and away we go. So same markup, 2 different locations. I can work from the command bar up at the top if I prefer, or I can work from these tabs. And one little tip for you guys here, for some of you that might know Revu a little bit and are hoping to get a tip or a trick today, keep in mind that these tabs are detachable. So if you ever click and drag and move those tabs around, or perhaps you work with multiple monitors, know that you can click and drag and detach those tabs at any point, or even switch the panel that they happen to appear on if that's going to help you out. Now, the third way to access any markup tools in Revu are by utilizing these toolbars. And these toolbars are just collections of buttons, essentially. They're pre-built, preloaded into the software. If you come over to the top to View and Toolbars, you'll see multiple toolbars, all with orange checks. If there's an orange check, that toolbar is turned on. If I select it, I can start turning toolbars off. Some people might think that this clutters up the interface. Some people love toolbars because it's ease of access. So if I turn on my measurement toolbar, for instance, all my measurement tools populate immediately up at the top, and I can access my third length measurement if that's the way I want to go. So 3 different ways to access the markups in Revu. You're going to pick your poison and sort of run with it. Now, I've made a couple changes at this point, right? I've decided, for instance, that I like to work with my panels open here on the left and the right-hand side. I've decided to turn my measurement toolbar on. I've turned off a bunch of other toolbars. I've turned off and on some of these tabs. Now that I've decided that this is the way I'm comfortable working within my interface, I can go right back to where I started under View and Profiles, just click directly on that bow-tied guy, and I can actually add this as a saved profile, which is going to save my interface. I'm going to call this Webinar. And now, even if I was to jump back into Simple, which was where I started, recall, Revu is smart enough to remember that this is the simple interface with all my panels closed, no toolbars, everything shut down and clean. I can still jump back into that webinar profile at any point in time. All of these tabs are still turned off or on as I saw fit, and I'm ready to go. Now, the best thing about this profile tool is that it's built to be more than just a way for one smart user to be able to control their interface. These are meant to be exported and shared. So you, smart user, can theoretically put this profile together in a way that's going to make sense for the people that you work with and actually share it. So you don't have to have every single individual replicating this same work. One individual can put together this particular interface, one individual can share that, and then you can have a whole team of people get up and running much, much faster because they're not all going to have to run through that process. That's Profiles in a nutshell. Let's jump into it. Let's open up a couple sample PDF files just so we have some things to play with. We'll start talking about PDF navigation. Now, one of the things I want to point out real quickly, where did I open these documents from? This is a File Access tab. And sometimes people might get thrown because it kind of looks like I've uploaded these documents into Revu, and that isn't the case. Quite frankly, Revu is just tied into Windows Explorer. So you guys are probably used to coming down here to Windows Explorer, finding a document. So I'm going to drill down into my demo folder here. Let's go to Revu Features, 3D. Let's say I want to open up this 3D PDF. That's typically how I need to go find my PDF files if I want to open them up, right? I need to open up Windows Explorer and drill down to find the actual document I want to be able to access. Now, in this particular instance, this 3D PDF I opened is here in front of me, ready to work. You can see it's over here in my Recents section of that File Access panel, which means even if I close this down, I still have it available for me to quickly access that document. And that's the benefit that File Access brings. It's a way to track and store the location of specific files so I can more easily grab them without needing to drill down into what could be, 5, 6, 7 folders deep. The other benefit that you should be aware of as it pertains to File Access is the ability to pin those documents. So you'll see when I hover over this under Recents, a little yellow pin appears. I can click on that pin and either pin file, in which case it'll be stored up here permanently in this pin section, or I can actually give it a new category. And if I wanted to call this again Webinar, because I am the least creative person in the world, you've got a webinar section, you've got that one particular PDF open, saved, ready to go. So if I'm working on a specific project with specific files, I have the ability to make it a lot easier for me to just start first thing in the morning, boot up Revu, and access the tools, or the PDF files rather, that I need immediately. All right, a couple other things to be aware of as it pertains to PDF navigation. One, note this Thumbnails tab over here on the left-hand side. It's the one that looks kind of like a 4-paned window. That Thumbnails tab is the way that you can view multiple PDF pages within a single PDF file. So you can see my combined set here is a 48-page PDF. And I can see all 48 of those pages if I scroll through this Thumbnails panel on the left. This is also where you'd be able to reorganize pages. So for instance, if I wanted to take this title sheet and make it a page 2, I could simply click and drag to change the order of those pages. If I wanted to delete some number of pages, I can right-click within that Thumbnails panel, and you'll note I can insert pages, extract pages, replace pages, delete pages, rotate, etc. Unfortunately, I don't have time to get into all of those today, but again, just know Thumbnails panel, right-click is where you can go to get all of those options, inserting, extracting, replacing, and deleting. If I wanted to delete pages, again, keep in mind, once I select delete, I have the option here to select just the current selected, or I can type in a custom range, let's say 40 through 48. And I can start deleting those pages, and now my new document is, again, 39 pages. So the Thumbnails panel, a handy way to be able to make those sorts of changes. I should also point out that we do have a handy auto-mark feature that will create page labels, and that's going to help with PDF navigation as well. And by navigation, I mean being able to move among the sheets themselves and know exactly where you're going. You'll notice all of these pages have a sheet number down here, but they're not necessarily visible within this Thumbnails panel. So if you wanted to create Page labels, you simply use this little button right at the top of that thumbnails panel to create page labels. This is going to ask you to select a specific page region. And then when you click and drag and draw your rectangle over that sheet number in the corner and click OK, it's going to generate a useful page label for all of these sheets. So rather than 1 or 2 or 3, for instance, Revu is going to look within that rectangle on every single page within the set. In this instance, it's 39 of those pages. And it's going to take the content it read in that rectangle I drew from every single page in that set, and it's going to use it to generate a nice clean label. And so now as I go through this thumbnails panel, you can see all of my sheets have been properly labeled, and it's going to be a lot easier for me to navigate throughout this combined set. So keep in mind the thumbnails panel, anything having to do with PDF navigation or PDF level changes, that thumbnails panel is going to come in real handy for you. The other thing I want to point out is that I have multiple PDF files open in a single instance of Revu. So I don't need to have 2 or 3 different versions of Revu running. I have one version of Revu running with 3 different documents, my combined set, my one-page sheet, and even those slides that I started with originally. I should also keep in mind that these separate tabs are also detachable. So in the same way that the tabs over here in the panels were detachable, the actual PDF tabs are detachable as well. Again, if multiple monitors, it's a great way to make the best possible use of your setup. Now, because we have these PDF documents open in separate tabs, you also have the added flexibility of being able to split these tabs. So if I come down here to the bottom left-hand corner and click split vertical, for instance, it's going to take a replica, toss it over here to the right. If I want to go one step further, I can actually click on this sync button down here in the bottom right-hand corner, and that will sync my 2 drawings up. So wherever I move around on one, it will actually follow me around on the other. This is a great way that I've seen folks do some real quick and dirty comparisons. So if you get some revisions, for instance, and you want to do a quick and dirty comparison to see what might have changed, this is a nice way to do it. All in 2 clicks. You simply click split tabs down here on the left, sync over here on the right, and then you can get to town moving those around. If you do get a lot of revisions, there's actually a couple more automated ways to do a very similar process. Do you get a lot of revisions? Yes, you do. I'm answering that question for you because everyone gets a ton of revisions. If you are one of those folks that's having to deal constantly with managing these changes, I'll show you one I think we have time for. If we come up top here to Document and Comparison, we actually have 2 features that will help with this. Compare Documents, I'm not going to show. Because Compare Documents is something, A, you can check out on our training page, but B, you essentially just saw me do the manual version of it. This Compare Documents feature is going to split your tabs for you. It's going to turn on sync for you, but it will also automatically place clouds over the perceived changes. So if that sounds like something you want to check out, definitely, again, go check out our website. The training page is going to be plenty of materials there for you to view that. I will show you this overlay function because it's a little bit unique. What the overlay pages function allows you to do is essentially select the documents you're looking to compare and stack them one right on top of the other. So in this instance here, I'm going to go and track down an original file, and I'm going to track down a revision. So in this instance, I start with my original, and it's going to place all of the vector content, all those black lines, and place them on a standalone layer in red. And then I'm going to come over here and grab my revision, and it's going to take all of the vector content from my revision, and it's going to place all of that on its own layer, and this time it's going to be in green. So you've got my original in red, my revision in green, and it's going to stack them one right on top of the other. And wherever the content is identical, you will see black. Wherever the content is different, it will shine through in its core color. So you can see here black content, but if I zoom in real close, I can see, for instance, the wall of this particular break room, has been pushed in. So again, identical content is viewed as black. And again, if I zoom out just to give you a whole picture, it's just a blank PDF with 2 layers on it. The blank PDF here with the original layer all in red, the revised layer here all in green, and again when they stack one right on top of the other, matching content is black, and that way those changes just pop right out at you in color for you to be able to easily see what's changed. The nice thing about this is it does allow you to focus on changes that matter, like this room, and sort of ignore changes that don't matter, like the removal of these words, for instance. So overlay pages and compare documents also, FYI, come in a batch version, file, batch, compare docs, and overlay. Again, not something we have time for here. We're just getting started. This is not the Getting Advanced webinar. If you want to go check out the batch versions of those functions, feel free to do so. They are both in Revu Standard, and again, there'll be more information on the website if you want to check those out on your own time. Let's talk about markups just a little bit. So here we have this PDF file, and it is totally blank. And at this point, you hopefully know a little bit about the interface. At this point, you hopefully know a little bit about being able to navigate around PDF files. Let's talk about the markups, which are the bread and butter for so many. Now, there's a couple things to be aware of. One, like I said at the top, you have the ability to come right up top under markup and select various types of text-based markups, text boxes, callouts, typewriter. I like to start with the callout, if only because it is the most handy. A callout is quite literally just a text box that already has an arrow attached. So if I wanted to make a note here, say check door specs, I can easily make that note. Again, another tip for those of you that might be somewhat familiar with Revu, if you ever decide you want to right-click on the elbow of this callout, you have the ability to add multiple leader lines. So if you wanted to point to more than one area, you absolutely could do that. We also have, aside from text, you've got shape-based markups like a cloud. So if I wanted to cloud over these sections, I absolutely could do that as well. One of the slightly new features that some of you older users might not be familiar with is Cloud Plus, which exists here again under Markup, Shapes, and Cloud Plus. Cloud Plus essentially combines those two functions here. So if I was to click and drag to make my cloud, I can click again to make my comment. I can say remove wall, expand storage room. So I have the ability to quickly make those markups, be they just basic shapes like clouds, ellipses, rectangles, or text, or even a combination of the two in the case of this Cloud Plus feature. Now, aside from those basic markups, you also have the ability to place specific images on the sheet itself. So let's say in this conference room, I have a real specific note. I'm going to come up top here to Cloud Plus, and I'm going to make a note that says check electrical outlet. Now, if there's a specific electrical outlet and I happen to have an image of it already, let's say I took some pictures on my phone and uploaded them to my machine, I can come up top here to image. I can track down the image file wherever I saved it originally. Let's see here. And then simply click and drag to place the image on the sheet itself. Now, that's nice. That's not always going to work perfectly, though, if only because you might have a lot of photos, more photos than you might want to put on a single PDF file. It might get a little overwhelming, a little scattered. Not to mention, it might start to increase the file size a little bit. So, as opposed to just dropping images directly on the PDF, we also have a tool called Capture. And what Capture will enable you to do is essentially right-click on any markup information, go to Capture, and you can actually take live images. If you happen to be walking around on the field and you have a camera on your machine, you can take a live photo right then and there. You can also upload images directly from your hard drive if that's where you've saved them. And again, I'm going to upload, say, 2 of them this go round. And it's going to embed those images into the markup itself. So I've got one specific markup here, and now I've got that little lens icon on the right-hand corner. And notice wherever I move my text, that lens icon follows, because again, those images are part of the markup. I click on the lens icon, and it opens up what is essentially a handy little photo album, a way for me to view those images quickly and immediately without having it take up too much paper space on the PDF file itself. That is Capture. Now, in terms of other types of markups you can create, we also have a markup tool called Snapshot. So if I come over here and click on Edit and Snapshot, I can select any symbol that exists on the PDF itself. So let's take this sync. I'm going to just simply click and drag over that symbol. It's going to flash blue, and then I can right-click and paste. And once I right-click and paste, again, I have now a markup version of that vector content that I can use, again, however I want. Now, one of the things we haven't talked about yet, but you need to be aware of is the ability to adjust the properties of these markups. And this matters in a couple different ways. One, for the purposes of this markup, it is really hard for me to differentiate what is PDF content versus this markup. Unless I happen to click on it and move it around, I wouldn't really know. So one of the ways you're going to want to differentiate your markups is by altering the colors a little bit. So in this particular instance, I can select my markup, right-click, and select Properties. Now the Properties option will just turn on this Properties panel over here on the right-hand side. Now keep in mind, there's only one Properties panel. So whether I click on this snapshot or whether I click on this cloud, the information in that Properties panel is going to adjust automatically depending on what I've selected. So now I can see Cloud Plus Properties versus Snapshot Properties, and frankly, even if I just clicked on the PDF file itself, it's going to show me the properties of the PDF file in and of itself. So keep in mind, one Properties panel just showing different information depending on what you've last selected. Now for our purposes here, I want to make it very clear that this is a snapshot, a markup, not necessarily content. So I'm going to come over here to change colors. I'm going to take all the black content and I'm going to make it red. And now it's very clear that this particular symbol is not CAD content. It's not something that's been part of the PDF, but rather this is a markup, something that for the purposes of review sort of hovers above all the underlying PDF content. Now, the last thing you want to be familiar with in terms of properties is that you want to be able to adjust more than just colors. One of the things I want to remind you of was I mentioned earlier today with the interface, this markups list still exists and it's still tracking all that information here at the bottom. And you can see it's tracking a callout, a cloud, a couple cloud pluses, and a snapshot. Now, odds are you are not going to care how many clouds you've made on a sheet. Odds are even better, you're not going to care how many snapshots you've made, but you might actually care what those clouds, what those snapshots are trying to represent. And so one of the key properties that you should remember is the subject property right up here at the very, very top. So in this specific instance, if I want to make it clear this isn't just a snapshot, but rather a specific sync type, I can come over here, I can type in sync type A, and voila, it actually adjusts the name of that markup in the markups list. And I can do the same thing with my Cloud Plus markups as well. Let's say, for instance, this one is an electrical comment. So maybe I'm going to give this the subject of electrical. And maybe even more than that, I want to color code electrical comments. So maybe this is going to actually be something that I show in blue. So let's make this a blue markup. Let's make the text box blue. Maybe let's give this a fill color of blue, and I can either turn that into a highlighter so I can see what's happening underneath, or I can choose to drop the fill opacity down a little bit to make it more clear. I can bump up the line width. I can even change, if I scroll down here to the bottom, the text color to this matching blue. So you've got a lot of ability to adjust the way these markups look after they're placed so they become a little bit more valuable. They mean something a little bit more specific than just another cloud or callout. Now, if that's the route you start to go, in order to standardize these comments, giving them specific names to make the reporting easier and giving them specific colors to make them more visible, you're not going to want to have to do the same thing each and every time. Like, I don't want to have to come back here to this other Cloud Plus symbol and keep clicking through everything to change it blue. So what you're going to want to do in this scenario is actually make use of our tool chest function. And the tool chest function is this little golden chest over here on the left-hand side. The tool chest is where you can go to save frequently used markups. And you can see them already being saved here under recents. So if I wanted to access my sync, you can already see it living there under recents. I have the ability to grab it and then place another version without having to recreate the entire snapshot. The catch with recents that you should be aware of is that the recents are for recents, recently used markups. The moment you close down Bluebeam, all of those are going to vanish and you're not going to be able to get them back. So rather than leaving them there, you've got two options. One, you can click and drag any markup out of recents and into My Tools. My Tools is a permanent storage facility for these markups in Revu. Everyone that has a license has access to a My Tools. It just comes with the software when you first get it. More than that, though, you can actually create your own customized tool sets. And one of the reasons for that might be if you get a lot of markups, keeping them all in one My Tools might be a little daunting. You might have 50 or 60 markups all in one space, and then it gets a little tricky to try and sort through all of them. So if you want to create your own tool set, simply click on this blue gear wheel directly underneath the golden tool chest. I'm going to click on Add. I'm going to give this a name, again, Webinar, Mr. Creative. I'm going to save this just to my desktop here for speed purposes. And then you can see over here in the bottom of my tool set panel, I've got a completely blank tool set ready for me to fill with markup. So I can take this particular sync, add to tool chest, and add it to Webinar. I can take my blue electrical Cloud Plus, right click, and add to Webinar. Any and all of the markups I've made recently, I am able to save to that tool set and then use it going forward. I'll never need to make an adjustment to another blue electrical Cloud Plus symbol ever again. I can just come over here and grab it whenever I need to. Now, one of the things you should be aware of is, as you can see, when I grabbed it, it saved it as the exact same original drawing. Now, the good news is, if this happens to be text I'm using a lot, if there's a lot of electrical outlets that need to be checked, then this is fantastic. I can just kind of place this wherever I need to. I don't need to retype any of the text. Odds are, though, that's not something you're going to be using quite so frequently. So rather than keeping this markup in what we call drawing mode, an exact replica of the original drawing, what you can do is right-click on the markup in the tool set and switch it to properties mode. And if you switch it over here to properties mode, you're going to have the ability to redraw a cloud and retype your text however you want, and it's going to retain all of those properties. And by properties, I mean not just things like color and opacity and text color, but really importantly, I also mean that subject name. So now every time I drop a blue call out, it's going to retain that subject name of electrical. Should I need to report, pull a report on any of the markups on this sheet, it makes it real easy to do. It's already sorted. It's already combined for me. If you have questions about markups, again, feel free to save those towards the end. There's definitely going to be a Q&A period. In the meantime, let's move on and talk a little bit here about the markups list. Let's go into a little bit more detail. The markups list you can see down here is column based. There's multiple columns that are tracking all of the information in this list below, starting with subject. Now, right now, my markups are sorted by subject because you can see the subject column has this blue highlight at the very top. It doesn't have to be that way, though. If I decided to come over here and click on author, for instance, I could choose to sort all of my markups by author. If I wanted to sort them by date, I can simply click on date, and it will organize those markups in chronological order. Oldest to newest or newest to oldest, depending on which one I prefer. So to change the way these markups are sorted, again, you simply click on the top of the column and it will change that sort. Now, you'll also notice that there's a ton of columns that I might not actually want to use. So maybe I'm not interested in locking my markups or needing to access a check mark column. These columns can also be toggled off and on as necessary. So if I decided to come over here into columns, you'll notice the columns with orange checks are turned on. I can click here to turn off that lock column, click here to turn off, say, this check mark column. Even this responsibility column way down here on the bottom, I could turn off if I see fit. So all of those markups can easily be toggled off and on as necessary. You can also do so en masse. So rather than having to click them one at a time from this columns button, if you click on the blue gear wheel right next to columns, it gives you the ability to just check a bunch of them off and on as necessary through this list. You can also change the order of those columns. So if I decide I want page label to come after status, I can simply select it and then use my arrows here to bump it all the way down beyond status. And frankly, if I decide that was a mistake, it's a little bit of an easier way to change the order of these columns. Simply click and drag the column and move it over to the left. The columns are meant to be, again, super customizable. You're also not just limited to the markups that we rather to the columns that we are placing in this markups list. So if you wanted to create your own custom column, you absolutely could do that. Again, if I click on this blue gear wheel right next to the word columns, I can click on the custom columns tab and I can actually make my own. So let's say here I'm going to go ahead and add a column. Let's call this material. Now, there are 6 types of custom columns that you can actually create. 4 of them are totally self-explanatory, and I'm not going to spend too much time on them. Do you guys want to guess what goes in a text column? It is text. That's it. Numbers columns house numbers. A date column houses the date, and a checkmark column quite literally is just a box for you to check off or on. So those four are pretty self-explanatory. The two that are most interesting are both choice and formula. Now, unfortunately, I won't have enough time today to go into the formula column, but suffice it to say, the formula column allows you to do basic mathematical formulas, similar to Excel. So if you guys have used Excel before, most of you probably have at some point. Excel is cell-based, right? So you would say something like A1 plus B1 and have an answer spit out into C1. Review formulas are column-based. So instead, you would say something like area column times a price column, and that could spit out some total for you. Again, not a ton of time to go into that today, but again, feel free to check out the website for additional training resources if you want to look into it. For today's purposes, we'll go into a choice column. Now, since I made that sync, I'm going to use that as my go-to. I'm making a material column. I'm going to have two choices. The first choice I'm going to call sync A. The second column I'm going to call sync B. So I've got two basic choices, sync A and sync B, in this material column. If I really wanted to, I can actually go back and assign a numeric value to each of those. So if I wanted to be able to come back here and say, sync A was X amount of dollars, I could. I'm not going to worry about that for today's webinar, but no, again, that option is there. Once I click on OK, you'll see the material column populates here in the markups list below. And if I double click on that list, I have two options that I can select. So again, you are not limited just to the columns that we give you in the markups list. You can certainly go through the trouble of making your own if you so choose. Also keep in mind, I mentioned earlier that profiles were a great way for you to standardize the way the software looks under the interface, right? Well, it's also a great way for you to standardize and share these columns. Both the custom columns here can be saved to a profile, as well as these tool sets that we just went over a little bit ago. Both of those are functions that can be shared independently on their own or tied to a larger profile and pushed out to a larger group of people to standardize. That's sort of what we want to help make it a little bit easier for folks to do. Take the work they're doing out of the realm of a task and put it as part of a standardized workflow. Now, the last item here in the markups list before we get to the reporting I want to mention is status. Now, the status column is a way for you to be able to set a specific status. And what makes a status unique in Revu, and again, it comes with these preloaded statuses, accepted, rejected, canceled, completed, and none, is that these statuses will permanently show up within this markups list. So unlike a custom column in which I can go between sync A and sync B and just alternate back and forth, the status column, once I say a markup has been accepted, not only does it show who has accepted it and when they accepted it down to the second. Should I go back here and say, never mind, this has actually been rejected, it will not overwrite the original information. Instead, it will keep a running list of every single status that has been set for that specific markup with the hopes of providing a certain amount of accountability, making sure information doesn't get lost, things don't go missing. Instead, every single status is visible and filterable. And by that I mean, if I wanted to get a sense of how many markups had been rejected in this markups list, I could come up here to the very top of the markups list, select filter, and then you'll see a little blue arrow appear at the top of every single column. At this point, if I want to view only the markups with a status of rejected, I can choose to filter this markups list down and view just that one markup. And one of the things you'll notice here is that when I'm just viewing that one markup, notice every other markup has been grayed out. They're still there. They're not deleted. They're not vanished. They're just kind of a gray, washed out color. The assumption on our end being, if you're choosing to filter your markups down, there's probably a reason you're wanting to focus on those as opposed to the others. So we leave the filtered markups in gray and the markups you chose to see here still in their live color, making them much easier to see. You can also choose to create reports based upon the information here in this markups list. If I go to summary, now there's a couple different types of reports. You can choose to export this information into CSV and XML, or you can create an actual PDF summary. Now, this specific PDF summary I can choose to append to the current PDF. I can also choose to insert my captured media, those images I tied to the markup itself. I can choose to include in this report. I can click on OK, and now it's going to generate a report, a standalone report that will actually be linked with my drawing set. So I can not only see the image that I had embedded in with the markup information, but if I want to click directly on the snapshot view here, it will jump me right back to the drawing itself, and I can see where that markup exists within the proper context. And just so you get a look at that, back in the thumbnails panel again, just the report tied to the original drawing and including a separate report for that captured media, those images or videos that you might want to embed to the markups themselves. One last thing I'll point out as it pertains to getting the information out of the markups list, in addition to being able to export it to a PDF report or export it to Excel, keep in mind you can also pull all of the information that exists within this markups list and place it in what we call a legend. And a legend is really just a markup version of what you see in that list below. So you can see down here, it's all of the different markups that exist within my markups list, but it's now on the actual drawing itself, and this will live update too. So if I decided to place another cloud, it's going to place notice that cloud and place it as the second cloud within that legend. So you've got a lot of options in terms of wanting to get the info out of this list in Bluebeam and put it somewhere a little bit more visible. All right, now that we're done with the markups list, let's jump into Studio with our last 10 minutes or so here. Now, Studio, for those of you that don't know, I'll give you a little background here. Studio is essentially space on an Amazon server that we have purchased and we give to our customers to use for free. So if you own a license of Bluebeam already, just to do basic markups, you already have access to a ton of free cloud space to use in one of two ways. All you'll need in order to access Studio is to create a Studio account. To do so, I've got my Studio panel over here on the right-hand side. I'm going to click on this little plug button in the top left-hand corner. You can see my Studio account is already listed here. For those of you that are brand new to Bluebeam and brand new to Studio, you would simply want to create an account, which again, all you need to provide is an email address and you make up a password. Password follows fairly typical password requirements. Got to have a mix of symbols and numbers, uppercase, lowercase letters, and got to be, I believe, at least 7 or 8 symbols long. Now, because I already have an account, I'm going to jump right back to my Studio account there, and I'm going to type in my password. I feel like I typed that wrong. Let's try that again. And let's click on OK. And it's going to log me into my Studio environment. Now, there are two parts to Studio. There are sessions and there are projects. Now, I'm going to start with Studio projects. A Studio project is essentially a lightweight document management system. So if you guys are familiar with something like Dropbox or Box or SharePoint, project-wise, any sort of tool that allows you to store files in some location that isn't your actual hard drive or a local server, that's really what Studio Projects is. It enables you to create space by which you can upload whole folder structures of files and store them there. So in this specific instance, I've got one project here ready to go. You'll notice once you create the project, you get a 9-digit ID. And once I open this project up, I can open up my folder. I can look at my sheets, architectural, civil, electrical, and you'll notice multiple PDF files all accessible to me at any point in time. Now, a Studio project is not limited to just PDF files. You can also have Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, image files, CAD drawings, frankly, whatever you want, because the key to a Studio project is that it is just storage. That's it. Think of it like a digital file cabinet. It's a way for you to store a multitude of files, regardless of file type, in this Studio project space. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that you can invite multiple people to join you in this Studio project space. I, as the creator of this project, can go to Settings, and in Settings, I can choose to grant specific users access to this project. So I can simply click on that green plus and then enter an email address. They would receive an invitation to join me here. Now, whether or not they could do anything once they're here is also up to me, because I can come over here to folder permissions and choose to set different permissions for the folders within this project. So if I want everyone I invite to have read-write privileges, I can set those privileges. If I choose to, I can set read-only privileges and then maybe just specify specific folders to have read-write privileges if that's what I prefer. Control of who can get into this project and what they can do is entirely up to me as the original creator of the project itself. I can also choose to set separated permissions. Right now I'm setting permissions for everyone in here, but if I decided to add a specific group of email addresses to set different permissions, I could do that as well. Something you'll have to check out on your own. On the website, unfortunately, we don't have a ton of time here in the waning minutes of our webinar. Once you choose to invite people and you're sharing access to these documents within the Studio project, keep in mind that the documents work on a check-in, check-out basis. So a Studio project is not built for live collaboration per se. This is not a place where you can have multiple people all working on the same documents at the same time. Again, Studio project is just built for storage. So once a document is opened, you'll see a little golden lock. Make sure you are checking those documents out. Once checked out, you'll see a handy red check letting you know this document is yours and ready to go. And then I would have no trouble being able to make my markups and do whatever I might need to do within this space. Once I'm done, I can choose to click up here at the top, or I can right-click on the markup, rather on the PDF in this panel on the right, and this is going to enable me to check that document right back in. So again, Studio Projects, it's built for you to share access to PDF files, Word docs, Excel files, but you're sharing access on a check-in, check-out basis. When I have a document checked out, nobody else is going to be able to work on it. I should also point out before I leave the world of projects here that you can also choose to check out the revision history for any particular documents you might see fit. So if you're working in projects on the long term, you can go back and view older versions of that document every time it is checked back in. All right, now let's leave a Studio project and let's talk a little bit about Studio Sessions, the second part of Studio. Now, Studio Session is built to be not document storage, but real-time PDF collaboration. And that is one thing to be aware of. A Studio Session is, unlike a Studio project, PDF file format only. So no Excel files, no Word documents. If you're working in a session, you are collaborating on PDF files only. And again, these are not necessarily built either to be for long-term storage. The thinking with the Studio Session is that they're a little bit more short-term. You still get a 9-digit ID. You can see the list of all of the attendees here that are in this session. Right now, my colleagues Luke and Lillian were in here previously, are no longer with me. You can see their name is grayed out. You can see my colleague Ethan is still in this session at this very moment in time. You can see 3 PDF files in this particular session as well. I can open up one of those files. And again, note, I still have multiple PDF tabs open. Most of these are local, just here on my machine. This particular tab, you can tell is not local. You can tell it's living in the cloud because it's got that little studio symbol, that little blue studio symbol in the tab in the top right-hand corner. Now, I have invited my colleagues to join me in this session space so that we can mark up the same PDF at the same time or on our own time. And if I pull up the markups list, it will reflect that. I can see my colleague Lillian has made multiple markups. In fact, I can choose to sort by author to see all of the markups made by my colleague Ethan, the markups made by my colleague Lillian, and the markups made by my colleague Luke. I can simply click through this list and it will jump directly to the markup I want to see in the context, again, in which I would like to see it. One thing to keep in mind about a Studio session, it is built for live, real-time collaboration. However, we know that there are issues that can come along with getting, say, 10, 15, 25 people all in one space to mark up the same drawing. And that can be a lot of crossed wires, the possibility of deleting markups, editing markups that maybe you shouldn't be editing or changing. So keep in mind, while you are in a Studio session, if I check out this markup, which was made by my colleague Lily, note that if I right-click on it, everything is grayed out. In order to maintain a certain sense of accountability here, while you are in a Studio session, I can make markups, I can move markups, and I can delete markups. And every single movement I make is tracked in this record down here on the right-hand side. But what I cannot do is alter, edit, or change the markups made by any other individual at all. Those markups are there permanently. They would only be editable by the original creator. In this case, it would be Lillian. So this is what I mean when I say a Studio session is built to be a little bit more short-term. You think of projects as the long-term document storage, and sessions is the sort of digital conference room, right? You leave some PDFs out on the table, you leave the door open, you can get your collaboration done, and then when you're done, you leave. You close it down and you can start up another session at another point in time. So Studio Sessions, again, built for live collaboration, multiple documents, the ability to have a running record of every single markup that's existed within the session space, and the ability, should it come to pass, to work offline. So if I wanted to be able to make markups in the Studio session, I can certainly do so. However, my colleagues would not be seeing the markups I'm making until I get back online. So keep that in mind. All right, that is Studio sessions and projects in a nutshell. We are just about at time, ready for a little bit of Q&A. One thing before I send you off into the Q&A, I wanted to make clear. I've mentioned a couple different tools today that exist within Bluebeam. We have 3 editions: Standard, CAD, and Extreme. There are some tools that are Extreme specific. I don't believe I went through and showed any of them today. That would seem to be a little unfair, but keep in mind for some high-level functions, things like batch hyperlinking, batch slipsheeting, features that we didn't have time to get into today, those are going to be in the Extreme specific only, and it's something that might be worth checking out. So again, feel free to go to our website. You can download a free trial for 30 days to test those features out. Keep in mind as well, we also have additional training options. I know that I've been essentially talking too fast for the whole last hour, and you guys might not have had a ton of time to be able to click through the way you maybe wanted to, but again, this was hopefully at least giving you a taste of what's possible. Feel free to play around with the free trial to give yourself the time to dig in deep. And if you do want something that's a little bit more customizable in terms of an agenda, if you want something that's a little bit more based on clicking together, following the clicks, feel free to look at our training options. Trainings are great and a really good way to get a lot of people up to speed on what Revu's capable of very quickly. You can also, for your higher level users, have them check out our Bluebeam user groups. These bugs are built for folks to be able to share workflow solutions with one another. As we said earlier, our whole approach here at Bluebeam has been to partner with customers as opposed to teach them how to work the Bluebeam way. So we really want to make sure that our customers are able to meet with each other, to talk with each other, and share knowledge. And then finally, with Bluebeam Consulting Services, again, a good chunk of this webinar is allowing individual users to get themselves up to speed. Sometimes if you want a little bit of help rolling out a larger workflow amongst a larger team, you might want a little bit more assistance than a webinar. So if you're interested in some consulting, feel free to contact strategicdevelopment@bluebeam.com. Thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you have a great day.